I felt all alone and lost without your love. My feelings for you will never be changed, 'cause it's you that I'm thinking of. Oh, how can I hide the pain I feel deep inside? Don't you know you're always on my mind? The way you made me feel made our love seem so real. Don't you know you were one of a kind? Oh, girl.
You know what I kind of like what I'm hearing is that both of you have mentioned your parents as impactful people in your lives. I don't hear that a lot these days from the kids that I work with. I never stopped working with kids. Gino, when you walked in a little earlier to Encore Talent, you said, so you're still doing this, because it's so many years later. And now it's a miracle for parents to still be together. I've got one club kid now that her father is locked up. Her grandfather got murdered. There's no male figure, and she gravitates towards me like you wouldn't believe. And at first, I was kind of nudging her away because, this might not be looking at it appropriate. She's running up to me like I'm her dad and giving me hugs. And then I find out later on that dad's locked up, grandpa got murdered. So who else is there? Parents don't stay together anymore. Kids have to go write letters in order to be in contact with their parents. And somehow your family lives were rather well adjusted, and it's a compliment, but it's also something you don't see these days anymore.
You don't, yeah. It's sad. It's sad that you see that.
And I experienced that a lot, being the police, going into people's homes, seeing how these kids, it's just sad. It's very sad that I honestly believe that parents have to be there for their kids at a very young age. And if that doesn't take place, then that child has a higher risk of wandering off into the unknown and mingling with people that they shouldn't.
Well, and what seems to be happening is that they're gravitating towards these role models that really shouldn't be role models. Mm-hmm. I'm going to wear my jeans way down there, or I'm going to wear my blouse cut down to here, or I think the gangbanger is cool and he got a cool car, and if I do what he does, I'll have a cool car, but if I go work in a factory, then I'll have a car that's not so cool. You guys had those options, but you chose not to take those options.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you both, because again, we haven't talked about this off the air. Have you guys been able to speak to kids? Have you gone back to the little village or go back to a school that you grew up in and said, listen, I'm going to talk to you guys. Maybe you do Officer Friendly. I don't even know if they still do Officer Friendly anymore.
I'm sure they do. The CAPS offices.
There you go.
Always involved with something like that. So, but I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I do it all the time. I do it every day. And I know, like I said, some of these kids, I tell them, I says, you're probably not going to listen to anything I'm saying. It's probably going to go in one ear out the other. But I'm going to tell you anyway. And if for some reason it sticks, it sticks. And I remember one individual in particular. I was working in uniform, and I was going into a gas station. And there was this guy that just walks up to me and says, I remember you. And I didn't remember. I'm like, who are you? And he's like, you locked me up. I says, oh, okay. I said, sorry.
Here we go.
Here we go. I thought it was like, okay, here we go. But he was like, no. I says, I want to thank you. He says, you gave me a really long lecture, after I got arrested. And I really did pay attention to what you said. And I got my life straight. He had just graduated from college. And he was working downtown. And he wanted to say thank you. And I thought that was like, okay, at least somebody.
So he was a kid at the time that you wound up arresting him?
Correct.
So now, is this something that you do strategically? You see somebody that kind of reminds you of somebody you came up with, and so not only am I going to arrest you, I'm going to turn Dr. Phil on you también?
No, well, it's one of those things that it's sad. I mean, it is really sad. I mean, a lot of times I don't want to arrest all these guys, but they go into a pattern, and it's like, in the police department, there's like a little saying, if I don't catch you dirty today, don't worry about it. In a few days, I'll catch you dirty then, So it's sad, but you see like this kid. There was like this one kid that he sold, narcotics all the time, and it just seemed that he was. I think he had to have been like maybe 13, 14, but he was so bad at it. The kid was so bad. I mean, it's like, come on, this isn't for you, man. You can't do this. I says, you don't know how to play the game, and you need to stop, kid. Okay, before you really ruin your life, just stop doing this and focus on other things. And it's sad to see, because a lot of times these kids aren't bad kids. A lot of these kids are not. They just like you said, they have a role model that's not supposed to be a role model, and they see that and they gravitate toward that. And it's sad.
And Gino, and I know you've spoken to people, because when I was with the Boys and Girls Clubs, you used to offer yourself to talk to some of our kids. What are some of the messages that you like to leave with them?
I always tell people, and I said, look, you know what? I did it. I did it. There's no reason why you can't do it. And then I even point him out. I said, "What's your excuse? You grew up in Little Village. I grew up in Little Village. Your parents have no money. My parents have no money. You don't have money for school. I had no money for school. You saw people get killed. I saw people get killed. So what's your excuse?" And that's what I tell them. And I said, and
what happened to the nice Gino?
That, sometimes you have to be in their face and tell them and be specific and say, hey, you know what? There's a fantasy out there that you see this thug driving around with the nice rims. So that car is gonna get probably burned or stolen, or maybe it's a stolen car. Is that the life you want to live, or do you want to be able to travel? You want to get out of this 5-mile radius and get out and live and see the world and see things? You can do it. I've had so many of my patients that they see my name on my smock and they say, "You're Dr. Romo?" I said, "Yes, this is me." Wow.
Can I have a mix?
I don't get that much, but I get that every once in a while. But I get more of my patients that say, "I expected you to look like you're in your 60s. I didn't expect for you to look this young. You own this entire place." I said, "Yes, this is me." And then they start asking me, "Where did you grow up?" I said, "I grew up on 26th Street. Is that where the jail is at?" "Yes."
Yeah, as a matter of fact.
Yes, as a matter of fact,
we were the number one rated station for 26 in California.
Yes,
they used to call in.
My fan base was Cook County prisoners. A great part of it. I used to get fan mail all the time. You used to get fan mail all the time as well.
That's the most interesting thing about young people. Eventually, I became a Boys and Girls Club director in Humboldt Park. I think, Johnny, you saw me when I was coming or going once, coming back from that Boys and Girls Club. So you got kids on Crystal and Washington in the middle of Humboldt Park, and they're trying to tell you, you don't know me, you don't know what I've been through, and you've never been through any of this. And they're kind of forgetting that I was a club kid, that I'd gone through a lot of that stuff. Not everything, but I went through a lot of that stuff. And you as a police officer, and now you as a doctor, you probably run into these people that say, well, you don't know what it's like. And they're kind of forgetting that you know what it's like.
And once I start telling them, and then they start to see that, that it's very parallel. Everything that I've gone through and what they've gone through. Yeah, we live in different times, but in reality, a lot of it, there's a lot of similarities that are there. And when I start to point it out, and I thought, okay, you know what? You've got no excuses. You really don't. And I talked to a lot of high schoolers. And
yelling at me, man.
I'm not that harsh, but I kind of sometimes I pick their brains, high schoolers, and I ask them, what are you going to do after you graduate from high school? It's amazing how many of them tell me, well, I think I'm going to take a year off. And I'm thinking, a year off of what?
Well, that's interesting that you say that, because one of the things I told you in private, and I know we're running out of time, but you never stopped.
Right.
You were focused from the time that you were at the club to the time you went to the Bogan and the UIC. You just never stopped.
Yeah.
So you've always been driven, and I don't know where you got that from. You can tell me about it if you want to, if we have time. And then Johnny, you kind of, it wasn't a straight line for you. So you kind of took your little detours, but look at you both now. So there's a couple of different approaches in terms of becoming successful, and these kids need to realize that you actually can be successful. And I used to tell some of these kids this: you run the club, how did you get to run the club? I said, well, I grew up in the club, and it just kind of worked that way.
Yeah, exactly. And and everybody takes a different route. You don't necessarily go from one point to another point in a straight line. There's going to be curveballs thrown at you. There's going to be obstacles. That's just part of life. That's what's going to happen. But if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. So you have to really think about what you want to do. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, but we really don't have good or enough role models. As I think that's something that we really, really do need.
Sure we do. We got Jay-Z and and we get Beyonce.
Well, those are your role models.
We got Snooki.
Kim Kardashian.
No, little Chris. He ended up hooked up with for 72 days.
See, he's my hero.
He met a Kardashian and hooked up with her. This is what I envisioned in terms of the conversation, and it would have been really cool to have a big round table discussion, but this almost works better because I've got two kids that started off at the Boys and Girls Clubs, and they both have gone. You guys both have gone about things in different ways, and you both have become successful, and you're both role models. And I think it's very cool that you're able to sit down and talk with us. If I asked each of you to kind of finish up this edition of WCGO's Club Kids Radio with whatever it is that you wanted to say to make sure it got on the air, Johnny, what kind of things would you put out there?
Can Gino start first?
I was, you know what?
Gino has a 20-minute speech.
I have a 20-minute speech.
Well, that's why I went to you.
He's got to get going, so I know. Let him go
Well,
first.
the paparazzi's away. Oh, by the way, Yarira has been taking video, and she's been shooting pictures, and
I think we just got
Thank you,
video
Yadina.
of your back, and I think that's it.
I'm sorry?
We have video of just your back.
Well,
Just so
yeah,
you know.
but that tape probably ended a long time
Ah,
ago.
okay.
I just, YouTube limits me to 15 minutes, so. That's
You know what? One thing of advice that I would tell young people is, do not give up. Do not settle. Get out of that 5-mile radius. You know, there's an actual statistic.
That stinks, because I'm still on Ohio and Damon, and I grew up on Erie and Hoyne.
See, statistic is correct. So you have to get out and do something. And I'm thinking,
Why is he yelling at me?
Philosophically, I'm just saying that,
But they say that. I did a George Lopez interview in '92 before he was George Lopez, and he said the same thing at that time, that people where he was growing up in his area of LA at the foothills, he said that's what he was trying to do at that time. He needed to get out from this little box. You got to get out of the box.
Yes, exactly. And that is so true. I mean, look at how successful he is now. That means something.
And if you don't do that, they kick you out, right?
I don't know. But that's what the advice that I would give to people. Have a vision for yourself. Find out what you want to do. Go out there and explore. Try different things. Find something that you like. If you're in school and you don't know what you want to do, that's okay, because things evolve. But you cannot quit. You cannot just say, you know what, I'm gonna settle and just work here and do this, and that's okay for them. No, you have to think way ahead of time, because you and I were talking. We've known each other for so many years, and time just flies.
And there's plenty that do that. There are plenty of girls that are 16 and say, well, I'm only going to wind up pregnant anyway. And then there are guys that while they're in high school, they decided, let's drop out because I'm going to deal drugs anyway. And that script needs to be flipped. And people like you guys hopefully will be able to do that.
Exactly. So you know what, I always like to step up, and I know Johnny would be more than willing to do this, to step up and identify yourself as a role model,
or as a police officer.
As a police officer, exactly.
See, he cracks his knuckles. You got to listen to that guy.
The badge helps a lot. I got to get one of those. What do? I show up with floss and the toothbrush.
You know who I saw at Joe's on Weed Street? I went to a comedy event there a couple of weeks ago with my son, who's now old enough to come with me to comedy events. He's my mercy date. Caesar the Beat.
Caesar the Beat.
Police officer Caesar Echeverria. Wow. He was one of my mobile DJ guys in 83, 84.
Wow.
He's Caesar the Beat, walking the beat.
Wow.
Okay, Gino's done his speech. So
I'm done with my speech.
The only thing I want to add to that, because Gino made some great points, and it may be hard for you to do depending on who you are, but I honestly tell a lot of these young kids is you have to choose your friends wisely. If you got some friends who are not exactly the best role models. I mean, because you honestly, I mean, come on, everybody kind of knows who when something's bad, when something's illegal, and you shouldn't be doing some stuff. Don't hang out with those people. Don't hang out with those friends. Surround yourself with positive people. And to this day, I've always lived by that. I try to surround myself with positive people, because that motivates me and that pushes me forward.
Gino Rockin Romo.
You are the one I've been thinking of. You are the one in my life.
Harv Roman back on the YouTube channel, and this mix is just about over with, and so is this excerpt. Go to www.wakeupdancing.com or WCGO AM 1590 in Chicago for more.